Hey everyone, this is us at behindthegmscreen.com again. I'm Richard,
I'm Sakura Draven.
and today we're talking about how do you get new players into the game.
Yes.
So I will admit, like for me, I immediately assumed that we were talking about somebody comes up to us and says, "Hey, I want to play in your amazing game. It sounds amazing. My friends told me how great it is. I want to play." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Now I've got to teach this person who doesn't know how to play role-playing games and get them into the game." And so that's where I took this question. So mentally, I think I'm going to have less to say about the first half of where you were coming from of, hey, a significant other or somebody doesn't know they want to play, but you're gonna entice them. You're gonna be the siren of
Oh, yes.
of game
Using the pirate
masters.
analogy. I
There
love
you
it.
go.
I love
Yeah.
it.
For me, it's all Greek, but sure, pirates too. They're like the first pirates, anyways, like Odysseus.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, how do you approach getting new players into the game?
Well, the first step is a casual conversation, asking why they don't think they'll like it, asking what their fears might be for it, and why they wouldn't have an interest. Because I've gotten many people into roleplay that aren't geeks, that aren't gamers at all. And it's that casual conversation. I want to find out what's holding them back,
Yeah.
and then I can address it. Like, because most of the time it's misconception. Their partner comes home and they're rambling off all these exciting things, and then it's like I don't know what you're talking about. So then I break it down and explain it to them, and that casual conversation gets them thinking like, okay, I'll try it. Because I'm like, you can not play, you can just try it. You don't have to be obligated.
And how do you approach when they say, "Well, it's gonna be too hard"?
Oh, then I say that I'm a teaching GM. So I will guide their character through every step, every time, if that's what they need. And I break it down in a way that they'll understand. And only I will be talking to them during the session, so they won't be getting everybody talking to them, giving them advice. So,
All right. So, how about people who they say that, they think it's boring?
well, then I talk about how much fun it is to sit around with your friends, not distracted by anything, and having a collaborative storytelling experience. And everybody has input into the story and the direction. And usually by that, they get excited. What's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? What story really made a difference to you? Now you can be a character, and now you can create a story for yourself.
So, what if they say they don't like pirates?
Well, everybody loves pirates.
Yeah, they probably do.
I GM variety of games.
Yeah.
I had one where Warehouse 13 and The Library, which were two popular shows, merged, and the warehouse and library became one. So characters could choose to be a librarian or a warehouse agent, and they went off on little one-shot missions. A popular video game was Dragon Age. There's an RPG for that. So there's always a way of finding somebody's interest and bringing them in. Like, okay, well, if you're interested in Vikings, I'll run a Viking game.
I think there's actually some role playing games based off of like professional sports and things like that. There's some
Yes.
and I don't know much about sports ball personally.
Oh, go sports. That's all I know.
Go sports. But there really is a role playing game about everything, and I think the people that don't think they're geeky, I'm like, if you can list the stats for your favorite players from like seasons and seasons and seasons, I'm like, you're basically a geek.
Yeah.
But instead of collecting magic cards, like you're like collecting numbers about your players of games. So yeah, I really question people's like, I'm not a geek. Like, unless you're like a human calculator, you're probably a geek.
Yes.
So you probably have passion about something.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's about finding that thread to bring them in.
Absolutely. So how often do you have new players in games?
It seems like over the last many years, I have had generally new players, more new players to the dynamic than experienced players. So I'm constantly thinking about everyone who sits at my table of explaining it to them as a new player. That's just what it's become.
So they agree to try this crazy role-playing game thing. And you've done this by finding their interests,
Right.
and then leading like a trail of breadcrumbs into your game. How do you then find the role-playing character for them?
Well, I usually will ask them what was a character that they identified with, a movie character, book character. We can make that. Or if they absolutely have no idea, a little trick that I learned is telling them to think about who they are as a person and then exaggerate certain aspects of themselves. So one character played a dwarf, and he really likes food as a person. He's very much a foodie. So he exaggerated that character trait into his character and enjoyed it. And it became a hilarity. At the end of combat, he looted all the bodies for food. It was just like, okay.
I've personally, I really try to fixate. One moment. I really try to fixate on what kind of experience do they want to have. And so obviously, like you touched on it with what is your favorite movie or favorite book or favorite comic book. And if for me, because it's so important to tell a narrative story, I do say like, okay, so you like this. So what did what part of that movie, book, whatever, did you like? And I try to emphasize, okay, great. So we're going to build this story together. And part of this story is you're going to be overcoming, hardships that are similar to this. And by doing that, I'm trying to introduce this concept that the best part of most movies or comic books or books is not when the character is just blowing stuff up.
Right.
It's them blowing stuff up after them having a hard time.
Yes.
Things go wrong in their life, and now they blow stuff up. You kill the character's dog, and now the character runs around killing everybody. It's great. It's super fun. It's like a wish fulfillment kind of thing. But to skip straight to the power, like level 20 kind of adventure, or straight to the 5th generation vampire level or whatever craziness, like it's not fun. It's generally not fun. They think it's going to be fun. And I try to like set their expectations that, well, your character is going to have hardships. Your character might even die.
Yes.
And I think it's important in that beginning to say, if we're telling this story together, especially just at least for my games, if we're telling this story together, then let's make sure that if something bad happens to your character, it's the most memorable thing that we can tell stories about later at the bar or when we're hanging out, and we were like, remember that time when my character died? And instead of it being like this like worst experience in their life, they're like, oh my God, like I feel like my kid died. Instead it becomes this like, when my character died, it had meaning.
Yes. And
that's my job as a game master, is to have the negatives be a positive through the art of storytelling and memories.
Yes.
But definitely at least, and I don't know about you, but I feel like when people are having a really rough time personally, sometimes they need that just pure wish fulfillment. They're just like, can I just like somebody already killed my dog. Yeah. So can I just skip straight to the like shooting people and
murdering people?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, actually you can. Though at that point you could just get a board game and you could just skip straight to the killing and rolling dice. But how so you've got the player at the table and they're like, everybody else knows what to do, but they don't. So how do you get them on board and having fun without boring everybody else?
So I create a packet for the player pregame. So I create the general lexicon of the game. I'll always try to use the terminology of the game, but I will always pause and explain what that terminology is. And I give them a list of that. I give them a list of their powers. I give them even a summary of the history of that particular game, where they're at, what they're doing. And I also do marks on their character sheets. I'll mark important things for them. So I create this like shortcut list so that they don't have to open a book, but if they want, in between turns, they can read this information, have it at the ready. So that's my first key. And then I reiterate, as I am as a GM, I will talk you through everything. Don't worry. Like, everything will be fine. You'll have all your options. And when it comes to a player decision, I never stronghold, but I say, these are your options. Think about how your character would react. And those simple guidelines usually can carry them through the first few sessions. And also in my game, I have 3 session rule. So 3 sessions, you will not die. You can rearrange all of your powers and stats at any time. After those 3 sessions, now your character's locked in, and yes, you can die.
I do something generally similar. I've never explicitly defined it, and I do like that idea of, because I generally tell everybody, hey, and actually even experienced players, I tell them, hey, the first couple the first couple gaming sessions, I say, anybody can rebuild their character.
Yes.
And I'm not looking to ruin anybody's day, because especially for me, we would switch gaming systems every probably every 3 to 4 months. So we'd complete a story, and then we'd move on to a different game system, and then complete that story, and eventually we'd get back to a game system we'd already played before. But because it was always a new game system, it was very easy for people to make not just substandard choices, but honestly, like really bad choices. There's definitely, you build your stats wrong in Dungeons and Dragons. It could be fun, but probably not. It just honestly, it won't be fun for the rest of the party when they realize they don't have a cleric because you can't cast any spells or something, right? So I tell people, you know what, you can just rebuild your character, but having a literal like, hey, you're safe for three games, and after that, let's just agree that you're going to be held accountable to the choices you made, because that's what makes it meaningful.
Yes.
Otherwise, you might as well just not have any rules at all, and then you won't care. You won't feel like you earned anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there a possibility to get any of these packets so somebody can see what it might look like?
Oh, yes. I actually do have copies of those.
Awesome. We'll attach it in the show notes, and people can... Yeah, that's great. Okay. So for me, when I have a new player at the table, and it's funny because I love printing out materials. I do love printing out summaries of the rules, because I just don't like stopping and worrying, and it's funny because I told you before that I don't like it when game masters make bad rule calls, but I also am like the first game master who will immediately say, I don't know. And so unless somebody knows otherwise, this is what I'm saying is happening.
Yep.
And that's actually probably why I'm so against people making up like fake rules and saying, oh, well, this is how this is how vampire hunger works. Well, no, it actually doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, it can work that way right now. Like, we can just say it works that way. That's fine. But don't say the rules say that, because I'm just so against it. But yeah, I like giving people role packets, and I actually like assigning experienced players as control of the book. That way I can ask that player, hey, can you look up how this is supposed to work?
Yes.
And then I can spend a little bit more time with that new player. And it's like completely the opposite of first edition Dungeons and Dragons, where you're supposed to have one person who knows how everything works, and then everybody else is supposed to be in this complete like mystery, like fairyland.
Yes.
But that's what I like to do, is I like to make the experienced players feel like they're contributing to making everybody have a fun time, while I can kind of worry more about the story and not so much about the rules, but then also kind of handhold that new player through. Now, you said something earlier about role playing, and how somebody who's never role played before may feel awkward saying first person what their character would say.
Yes. The interaction, I find that 90% of the time, that's what makes somebody hesitant.
Yeah.
Like, I can't talk like my player character. I don't want to act like them. That'll make me feel weird. Well, then I can shortcut that real quick. You don't have to. You can tell me in general that I want to respectfully talk to the shopkeep about some fair prices. Cool, we can do that. And I find that new players will eventually get into the role play, especially if you have at least one experienced player that really gets into the role play. That person can kind of rally everybody, and they'll become more comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest things that I think makes people hesitant, is they're awkward. They don't want to do that.
I think for me, I found that a lot of people get hesitant because they don't know the right words, and they think the group is going to make fun of them, especially if you're talking about, say, and this doesn't really matter whether or not you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you're trying to interact with the king or empress or something, or if you're a vampire and you're trying to interact with the local sheriff. And definitely in some, I hesitate to say bad games, but definitely there's been scenarios where I've been with a group and you have somebody saying, oh, well, now the sheriff's going to kill you or something because you said something wrong. And giving people that freedom of saying, my character is going to ask for help and offer favors in return, then it doesn't matter that the player doesn't know the right lingo, because there's so much formula, or like, what is it? Procedure. There's so much procedure that you're supposed to follow when interacting with, I guess, like feudal systems.
Yes.
And it's okay because we're not really vampires living thousands of years that follow formal rules of address. Yes. And giving people the freedom to say, I asked for help. Okay, great. Your character says this, and if the game master knows, you can literally say what they would have said, which allows them to learn. And if the game master just says, this is how I respond, and they respond first person or whatever, that works too. So, yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. Yeah. All right. So this, I think, is our second episode. Is there anything else you want to contribute before we... You're going to keep asking that. Eventually I'll have something to say, but... hey, exactly. I'm still new. Well, one of these times I won't, and you'll say, wait, I still had something. And I'll be like, dang it. No, I think we covered all the key aspects of trying to draw new players in and make them feel comfortable and make them feel like they can have... I want to facilitate everything to make that player have a positive experience. Absolutely. So... I feel like... I think most people understand that we are all ambassadors to this niche hobby, and it's up to us to make it a good experience so that they then become ambassadors to the hobby. So absolutely, we want them all to have a good time, while at the same time, we don't want their good time to ruin other people's good time. So you want to like have them be good citizens of the role-playing community.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that we want to ask the listeners to comment specific areas where, because we could take any slice of these and make a 15-minute episode just about that slice.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think all these initial episodes definitely are going to be more high level, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. So
yes.
All right. With that, if you have ideas, go to behindthegmscreen.com and comment on this episode or any episode. And bye, everyone.
Bye.